Nós, estudantes de Relações Internacionais da PUC São Paulo e integrantes do Grupo de Estudo de Conflitos Internacionais, firmamos uma parceria com Democracy Now!
A partir de agora, vincularemos com legendas em português as mais importantes notícias internacionais da semana.
From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
For all women in Ireland, it is just momentous. Nobody has to travel anymore. They can be looked after in their own country. And I work in that profession, have done for 10 years, and I can't tell you, it's brought me to tears today that this has actually happened. It's just incredible.
In an historic referendum, Irish voters overwhelmingly repeal one of the world's more restrictive abortion bans. We'll go to Dublin for the latest. Then we look at the killing of Claudia Gomez Gonzalez, a 19-year-old indigenous Guatemalan woman. A U.S. Border Patrol agent shot her in the head last week in Texas near the U.S. border.
My girlfriend was killed while crossing the border. An immigration agent shot her. Unfortunately, she was shot in the head and killed immediately. I'm asking, please, for everyone who sees this video, support me in demanding justice and bringing to justice the person who did this.
All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. In an historic referendum, Irish voters have repealed one of the world's most restrictive abortion bans. The yes vote won 2/3 of the vote in Friday's referendum, which deals a blow to Ireland's conservative Catholic Church and repeals the 1983 measure that banned abortion under almost all circumstances. Women across Ireland celebrated the results of the referendum over the weekend. This is Janine Fretwell in Dublin.
For all women in Ireland, it is just momentous. Nobody has to travel anymore. They can be looked after in their own country. And I work in that profession, have done for 10 years, and I can't tell you, it's brought me to tears today that this has actually happened. It's just incredible.
We'll go to Dublin after headlines for more on the historic referendum. Atop North Korean officials heading to New York as the U.S. and North Korea try to salvage plans for the proposed June 12th summit between President Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. General Kim Yong-chol will be the most senior North Korean official to visit the United States since 2000. His visit comes after President Trump revived hopes on Saturday night that the summit would go forward, tweeting, "It'll happen," only days after canceling the summit. South Korean President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un also held a surprise meeting on Saturday at the demilitarized zone between the two countries. To see our full coverage of the diplomatic efforts between the U.S., North Korea, and South Korea, go to democracynow.org. Israeli military jets have bombed Gaza after Israel claimed dozens of mortars were launched from Gaza toward Israel. This comes after an Israeli tank fired into Gaza Sunday, killing 3 Palestinians. Israel said the tank fire came after Israeli troops found a bomb planted along the border. Meanwhile, Palestinian protesters have launched 2 boats from Gaza in a bid to break the Israeli-imposed blockade. The boats will attempt to carry a group of about 30 people, including Palestinian protesters wounded by Israeli soldiers during the weeks-long nonviolent demonstrations in Gaza, in which the Israeli military killed more than 100 Palestinians and wounded more than 12,000. In Guatemala, family members are demanding justice for Claudia Gomez Gonzalez, a 19-year-old indigenous teenager who a U.S. border agent shot in the head and killed last week in Texas near the U.S. border. Claudia's nickname was Princesita, or Little Princess. The Guatemalan consulate has called for an investigation into Claudia's death. Border Patrol initially claimed the shooting occurred after an agent came under attack by multiple subjects using blunt objects. But the agency later changed its story, saying the agent was, quote, allegedly assaulted. This is Lydia Gonzalez, Claudia's mother.
I'll save some money, she said. I'll earn money for my studies, she said. But unfortunately, she wasn't able to do that. My poor little girl, my little baby. No, no, no. This can't be. She's gone, my baby. That's how it is. I want justice for my girl, because it's not fair for them to do this. Now, if people are able to help me retrieve my baby's body as soon as possible, that's what I want. We can't do anything else now. She's dead. She's dead.
We'll have more on the death of Claudia Gomez-Gonzalez and killings by Border Patrol agents later in the broadcast. In North Carolina, 2 journalists died Monday while covering the landfall of subtropical storm Alberto, which has brought heavy rain and flash flood warnings to swaths of the southeast U.S. News anchor Mike McCormick and photojournalist Aaron Smeltzer of the NBC affiliate WYFF died when a tree fell on their news truck. This comes as parts of Maryland are recovering from the second once-in-a-thousand-year flood to hit the region in only 2 years. More than 8 inches of rain inundated Ellicott City on Sunday, sending a wall of water surging down Main Street. Scientists have linked extreme rainfall events to climate change. In Colombia, the presidential election is headed to a contentious runoff after voters failed to elect a president outright during Sunday's elections. The runoff will pit the right-wing frontrunner, Iván Duque, against the left-wing former mayor of Bogotá, Gustavo Petro. The election is expected to determine the future of Colombia's historic 2016 peace deal with FARC rebels. While Gustavo Petro, a former guerrilla, supports the peace agreement, Iván Duque has vowed to roll back key parts of the deal, including reversing the amnesty for former rebels. In Mexico, journalist Alicia Diaz-Gonzalez has been killed in the northern city of Monterrey, making her at least the 5th journalist to be killed in Mexico so far this year. She was a financial reporter for the newspaper El Financiero. She was found beaten to death in her home on Thursday. In Brazil, a nationwide truck drivers' strike has continued into a second week, paralyzing the Brazilian economy. The truck drivers are protesting soaring fuel prices. Their strike has forced factories, businesses, transportation lines, and schools to shut down. Brazilian President Michel Temer has deployed the federal police and military to break the strike. In Pakistan, more than a dozen transgender candidates are running in the upcoming general elections, including 2 candidates running for seats in the National Assembly. This comes after Pakistan passed historic legislation outlawing discrimination against transgender people and allowing them to choose their gender identity for official government documents, including passports and driver's licenses. Separately, Pakistan also passed a constitutional amendment to advance the rights of people living in the tribal areas along the border with Afghanistan. The constitutional amendment ends the colonial-era laws that denied people in the tribal areas the right to legal representation and to appeal their detention. The European Commission is seeking to ban an array of single-use plastic items, including plastic plates, cutlery, and plastic straws, in efforts to cut down on waste and clean up the oceans. The European Commission unveiled the draft rules Monday, which will require the approval of the European Parliament and all EU member states. The European Union estimates the ban would prevent 22 billion euros worth of damage to the environment and prevent 3.4 million tons of carbon emissions. Starbucks will close more than 8,000 stores nationwide for anti-racial bias training today. The training comes after 2 black men were arrested for being inside a Philadelphia Starbucks last month, sparking widespread protests and threats of a boycott. The 2 men settled a lawsuit earlier this month with the coffee chain and the city. Rashawn Nelson and Dante Robinson will receive a symbolic settlement of $1 each from Philadelphia, along with a promise from Starbucks to set up a $200,000 program for young entrepreneurs. It is not clear what they will win from Starbucks. Earlier this month, Starbucks also announced a new policy that people could use Starbucks bathrooms and sit in its cafes without making a purchase. Privacy advocates are sounding the alarm after a woman's Amazon Echo device recorded a conversation between her and her husband, then sent it to her husband's employee. Amazon Echo, a voice-activated device that is always listening and often recording, mistakenly thought the couple said the name Alexa while they were having a private conversation. The device then misinterpreted the couple's conversation as a series of instructions, sending a recording of the conversation to a name on its contact list. In response, the woman said, quote, "I'm never plugging that device in again." And in New York, friends, residents, and fellow taxi drivers gathered for a vigil Sunday to honor Yumin Chow, a taxi driver who died in apparent suicide. His body was found floating in the East River last Wednesday after he'd been missing for weeks. He's believed to be the 5th taxi or livery driver in New York City to commit suicide in 5 months, as traditional taxi drivers have been pushed out of business by Wall Street-backed ride-hailing app-based services like Uber and Lyft. This is Bhairavi Desai, co-founder of the New York Taxi Workers Alliance, speaking on Democracy Now!
It's a race to the bottom. Every day, people are going deeper and deeper into poverty. And this is the reality of the so-called gig economy. It's about destroying what has been a full-time profession, turning it into part-time poverty pay work. Uber and company, Uber and Lyft, and by the way, they're absolutely the same. It's all one same business model. They used their political might. In 2016, Uber and Lyft combined spent more on lobbying than Amazon and Walmart combined. And Microsoft as well. And so they used their political might to win deregulation bills.
And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
We got $6 billion for opioid and getting rid of that scourge that's taking over our country. And the numbers are way down.
This week, President Trump claimed the numbers are way down in the opioid epidemic. In fact, the latest statistics show there was an increase in opioid-related deaths and overdoses during Trump's first year in office. And the $6 billion Trump mentioned is in the budget for next year. Today, we'll look at the origins of the opioid epidemic and how Purdue Pharma, the manufacturer of OxyContin, knew more than 20 years ago that the drug was highly addictive, but continued to promote it with promotional materials like this.
The rate of addiction amongst pain patients who are treated by doctors is much less than 1%. They don't wear out, they go on working, they do not have serious medical side effects. And so these drugs, which I repeat are our best, strongest pain medications, should be used much more than they are for patients in pain.
Since that video was recorded, more than 200,000 Americans have died from opioid overdoses. We'll speak for the hour with Barry Meyer, author of Painkiller, An Empire of Deceit and the Origin of America's Opioid Epidemic. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. President Trump ordered tariffs Thursday on imported steel and aluminum from Canada, Mexico, and the European Union, prompting criticism from U.S. allies who said they'll introduce retaliatory sanctions. The European Union said it would challenge the U.S. tariffs at the World Trade Organization. The tariffs came as Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said talks to renegotiate NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, broke down after Vice President Mike Pence insisted any new deal include a 5-year sunset clause. Meanwhile, Mexico blasted the tariffs as the latest insult by a hostile Trump administration. This is Mexican Foreign Minister Luis Videgaray.
Mexico's position on trade or on immigration or on security or on whatever area of cooperation with the United States will not vary, not because of offensive rhetoric nor unjustified unilateral measures like this type. We will continue to defend the interests of Mexico just as we have done until now.
The European Court of Human Rights has ruled Lithuania and Romania violated the rights of two accused men by allowing U.S. Central Intelligence Agency to torture them in secret prisons. The court found the countries violated Article 3 of the Geneva Conventions, which requires the humane treatment of prisoners of war. Judges say Lithuania operated a secret CIA black site from 2005 to 6, where accused al-Qaeda recruiter Abu Zubaydah was tortured. They also ruled the prisoner Abdulrahim al-Nashiri was tortured at a CIA prison in Romania between 2004 and 5. The New York Times reports al-Nashiri was tortured at a separate CIA black site in Thailand in 2002, a prison that was overseen by Gina Haspel, who was confirmed last month as CIA director. In Spain, Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy lost a no-confidence vote in Parliament today as a major corruption scandal toppled his administration. Rajoy insists he was unaware of an alleged bribery ring that saw members of the Conservative People's Party receive cash payments in return for political favors. Pedro Sanchez, head of the opposition Socialist Party, will replace Rajoy as Spain's prime minister. Sanchez has the support of the anti-austerity Podemos party, as well as regional parties from Basque Country and Catalonia, although Sanchez has said he won't support Catalonia's bid for independence. Italian lawmakers have agreed to a coalition government led by Eurosceptic populists with Giuseppe Conte as Italy's new prime minister. The coalition brings the right-wing anti-immigrant League Party together with Five Star Movement, which seeks to abandon the euro as Italy's currency. In Nicaragua, armed supporters of President Daniel Ortega opened fire on a crowd of tens of thousands of anti-government protesters Wednesday, killing at least 11 people, wounding almost 80 others. Elsewhere in Nicaragua, another 4 were killed and scores more injured at demonstrations around the country, bringing the death toll in recent anti-Ortega protests to nearly 100. Wednesday's deaths came as some of the mothers of those killed led a protest dubbed the Mother of All Marches. The protests began in April as President Ortega moved to roll back workers' pension benefits. U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Nikki Haley said Thursday she'll veto a UN Security Council resolution calling for the protection of Palestinians living in the occupied territories. The resolution, introduced by Kuwait, calls Israel's massacre of Palestinians at recent nonviolent protests in the Gaza Strip excessive and indiscriminate. Israeli snipers have killed at least 116 Palestinians since late March, while injuring some 12,000 others. Ambassador Haley circulated a rival resolution Thursday, primarily blaming Hamas for the deaths and injuries. Back in the United States, President Trump pardoned right-wing media personality Dinesh D'Souza Thursday, vacating his 2014 conviction for breaking campaign finance laws. D'Souza is known for his racist and homophobic comments, has previously called President Obama a boy from the ghetto, mocked survivors of the Parkland, Florida high school massacre, and assailed women activists as feminist whiners. Trump also signaled he's preparing to commute the sentence of former Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich, who was sentenced to 14 years in prison on corruption charges that included trying to sell or trade President Obama's former U.S. Senate seat. And Trump is preparing to pardon TV personality Martha Stewart, who was convicted in 2004 of lying to investigators in an insider trading case. Both Blagojevich and Stewart once starred in Trump's reality TV show Celebrity Apprentice. Virginia Democratic Senator Mark Warner warned the pardons could be a signal to those indicted by special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation. Warner tweeted, quote, "The possibility that he may also be sending a message to witnesses in a criminal investigation into his campaign is extremely dangerous. In the United States of America, no one is above the wall," Warner tweeted. California Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein is set to introduce a bill that would end the Trump administration's practice of separating immigrant children from their parents. The legislation comes less than a month after Attorney General Jeff Sessions made his threat to migrants crossing the U.S.-Mexico border.
If you are smuggling a child, then we will prosecute you. And that child may be separated from you as required by law.
Since then, reports of babies torn from their mother's arms by ICE officers have drawn outrage and widespread calls for an end to the practice. Today, the ACLU, National Domestic Workers Alliance, and other groups have called a nonviolent National Day of Action for Children. They're planning protests in at least 36 cities across the United States. President Trump called today for the firing of comedian Samantha Bee after she called Ivanka Trump the C word on her TBS show Full Frontal. Trump tweeted, quote, "Why aren't they firing no-talent Samantha Bee for the horrible language used on her low-rating show?" On her show Wednesday, Bee blasted the president's daughter, who's also a senior White House advisor, over child-parent separations at the U.S. border, showing an Obama-era photo of young people sleeping in cages and a photo of Ivanka Trump and her son posted to Instagram last weekend. This is the clip from Samantha Bee's program.
After decades of ignoring the issue, Americans are finally paying attention. Well, most of us. Ivanka Trump, who works at the White House, chose to post the second most oblivious tweet we've seen this week. You know, Ivanka, that's a beautiful photo of you and your child, but let me just say, one mother to another, do something about your dad's immigration practices, you He listens to you. Put on something tight and low-cut and tell your father to stop it.
Samantha Bee apologized for her comments Thursday on Twitter, saying, "I crossed a line and I deeply regret it." The watchdog group Common Cause is calling for a probe into whether President Trump is abusing his office to enrich his family, raising the alarm about what it calls cronyism, nepotism, abuses of power, and conflicts of interest in Trump's recent negotiations with China. Trump announced he would save Chinese electronics company ZTE from collapse just 2 days after Beijing invested $500 million into a Trump development project in Indonesia. A week before that, Ivanka Trump's fashion business won approval for trademarks in China. Ivanka Trump abruptly left a conference call with reporters on Tuesday when asked about her business in China. In Washington, D.C., the nation's largest union of federal employees has filed suit against an executive order that severely limits the amount of time government workers can spend on union activity. Trump signed the order last Friday, along with other measures that'll make it easier to fire federal workers while compelling federal agencies to negotiate less union-friendly contracts. The president of the American Federation of Government Employees, J. David Cox, said in a statement, "This is a democracy, not a dictatorship. No president should be able to undo a law he doesn't like through administrative fiat." In Las Vegas, Nevada, more than 50,000 casino and restaurant workers are poised to walk out on strike today after their union contracts expired at midnight. Early this morning, the culinary union Local 226 reached a tentative 5-year deal with Caesars Entertainment covering some 12,000 workers that'll avert a strike at 9 casino resorts on the Las Vegas Strip. But talks remain ongoing at a further 25 properties where more than 30,000 workers say they're ready to join picket lines later today. In Washington, D.C., prosecutors have dropped felony charges against several people who face possible decades-long prison terms after they were arrested at President Trump's Inauguration Day, Disrupt J20 protests in early 2017. The dismissals came after defense lawyers told the court that federal prosecutors hid dozens of videos from the protesters in a breach of court procedure known as a Brady violation. Although a jury found a first round of defendants not guilty last December, prosecutors have continued to press felony charges against scores of people that could see some of them imprisoned for as much as 60 years. To see our full coverage of the J20 protest trials, you can go to democracynow.org. In Northern Ireland, pro-choice activists deployed robots on the streets of Belfast Thursday to distribute abortion medication in defiance of a near-total ban on abortions. Police seized the 2 robots and the pills they were distributing and said they were investigating whether to press criminal charges. The protests came just days after voters in the Republic of Ireland voted to resoundingly repeal a constitutional ban on most abortions. The move left Northern Ireland as the only part of the United Kingdom and one of the last parts of Europe where abortions are effectively outlawed. This is pro-choice campaigner Eleanor Malone.
We have a number of volunteers, activists who have volunteered to take safe but illegal abortion pills publicly in defiance of the law. And we are doing this to say that we're not willing to be the bastion of backwardness in the developed world. We have a situation where after the victory of the yes vote in the repeal referendum, Northern Ireland will be one of only 2 jurisdictions in Europe to effectively criminalise women for having abortions, and we're just not willing to accept that.
In Argentina, hundreds of women rallied outside the Congress in Buenos Aires Thursday as lawmakers debated whether to legalize abortion in the predominantly Catholic country. Argentina currently only allows abortion with the permission of a judge in cases of rape or a risk to a pregnant woman's life. In Croatia, border police opened fire Thursday on a van carrying 29 migrants from Afghanistan and Iraq, injuring 9 people. Police say they fired when the van tried to avoid a roadblock set up to interdict migrants entering the country from Bosnia. Among those hurt were 2 young children. In Hawaii, FEMA has ordered the evacuation of parts of a neighborhood on the state's Big Island as fast-moving lava from Kilauea volcano threatened to destroy more homes. The evacuation zone is home to some 2,000 people. At least 77 houses have been destroyed since the volcano erupted last month. Officials also warned the threat of toxic gases, choking ash plumes, and volcanic glass falling from the sky. And a prison watchdog is calling for an end to the practice of prisons charging co-payments to prisoners seeking medical care. 42 states and the federal prison system charge prisoners up to $8 to see a doctor. The Prison Policy Initiative says of the practice, when you're making pennies an hour or nothing at all, a small copay can be the equivalent of hundreds of dollars. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report.
Nosso programa fica por aqui. Você pode acompanhar a gente pela página do Facebook e pelo blog do GSTR em Transe. Nos vemos na próxima semana. Até lá!